welcome to Treasuring Every Verse. I'm your host, author and Bible teacher, Kevin Madison. Thank you for joining us today. All right, folks, so last time we left off, we were talking about the timeline, and I was showing you how the Bible takes the prophecies that was given about Israel and how we were able to use everything that the Bible says, and we came up with all these things like the Jewish people living in Israel, but not self-ruled from Jerusalem. And we've got to remember, the key to all of this is Jerusalem and the nation. Why? Because within God's reconciliation plan, God has laid out a map for the Jewish people. So we had this map. I showed you this before, and I'll show it to you briefly just to put your remembrance. Watch, we had this map, and it basically says Israel. Then we had the Gentiles, and then Israel again. So what is that? That's basically the law given to Moses. That's basically the gospel given to the church. And here, this is future, right? So this haven't happened yet. We're within this box right here. This is the church age. So essentially, here's the future, and God reverts back to Israel. You say, why? Because Christ was the king, or is the king. King of what? King of the Jews. Remember? Pilate wrote that above his cross, put that heading there. And the religious folks said, hey, no, take that sign down. He's not our king. Pilate said, forget it. He is what I said he is. Now, Jesus also said he was a king. You have to ask yourself, king of what? King of righteousness, king of glory, king of all these things, but primarily within the prophet, these prophetic books, Jesus Christ is the king of the Jews. So let me ask you a question. When did Jesus ever sit upon the throne in Jerusalem and rule over Israel? He never did that. So every time you hear all these prophetic books, you know, Isaiah, Jeremiah, all these people talking about Jesus and sitting on the throne, you know, in the Psalms, these prophecies. I read to you Psalms 2 about God sitting his king upon his throne. Listen, that stuff haven't happened yet. Now, if we believe, and we do, that the word of God is true, that it is absolutely true and cannot fail, we understand that there's coming a time in our history, or should I say Earth's history, that Jesus Christ is going to reign from the throne of David in Jerusalem. And he's going to reign as King of the Jews. So let me tell you this, folks. And if you dislike the Jews, you might want to turn the channel right quick and come back. Listen, Jesus Christ is a Jew. You say, I don't believe that. Well, the woman at the well so acknowledged him as a Jew. And so did all the people in the Gospels. They acknowledged him as a Jew. His mother and his father, earthly mother and father, right? They were Jews. Folks, the man is a Jew. So if you got a problem with the Jews, listen, if there's anybody that can't be destroyed on the face of this earth, if I was you, I would hang out with the Jews. Why? Because they can't be destroyed. You say, why not? Because if they get destroyed, if every Jew is wiped off the face of the planet, you know what happens? The Bible becomes a lie. God becomes a liar. Satan could raise up his hand and say, I defeated God because I stopped his word from becoming true. That's the whole plan, folks. So if he can do that, get rid of all the Jews, Satan wins. Because 25% of the Bible talks about this time right here. It points forward to this. So we still have 25% of the Bible that haven't come true. This is going to happen, folks. It's going to happen, whether you believe it or not, because God has said that's his plan. Okay, so let's move forward. I want to show you something. Let's go back a couple of slides, and it's just to get us in a position get us in a position where we can get our feet on solid ground here. So we had talked about Babylon, right? And we had went through in great detail about Babylon, and we needed to do that to get this sure foundation, because Babylon, remember what I told you, it goes all the way from Genesis all the way through Revelation. And out of all these pieces in the statue, Babylon is the only one that does that. You know, the Medes and Persians have their part, the Greeks have their part, the Romans have two parts. Okay, that's this timeline that runs right here. There's a pause in between the original Roman Empire and the empire that's going to be come back as a 10-state confederate here in the end days. So right now we are here. This part, this Roman Empire sort of faded to the back. They didn't go away. They just sort of faded away like the Roman Empire did. And we're here. This is called the Church Age. So in this timeline, though, Babylon, starting here, is the only one that comes all the way to the end. The rest of them just have their little segments, you know? So you say, well, how is that possible? You know, Babylon today, the city sits in ruin over there in Iraq. Yes. But the spirit of Babylon, remember, that's why we went through all of this physical realm versus spiritual realm. The spirit of Babylon still lives. It still lives. We went through this segment, we were talking about the devil and the way he sees himself versus the way God sees himself. Remember, the king of Tyre was a man in the first 10 verses of Isaiah 14, and then God addressed the king of Tyre again in another segment in the same chapter. So we had one physical king, and then we had another spiritual king. So don't get so caught up in looking at just the physical realm. When you're reading the Bible, you have to understand that it shifts from physical to spiritual, God's view and man's view. So Babylon does that. So let me point this out to you. Babylon, God used Babylon to conquer Judah and Jerusalem, began the times of the Gentiles. So I got some notes here that I want to show you. Let's go here, and we're going to wrap up Babylon today, and we're going to move over to the Medes and Persians. And the reason we're going to do that is because it's the next big step in the progression of that statue that I showed you, and then we'll revert back and take it through the spiritual realm. So these are all the things that happened during the Babylonian time. Okay, so it started at the Tower of Babel, right? And I'm giving you essentially Babylon's history. So in Genesis 11, I showed you previously that this is where the birth of all false religion came from. At the Tower of Babel, God dispersed these people. We see it here in number 2. The confusion of the languages exported Babylon's religion to the entire world. So that's how you get all these religions, and you see the same statue everywhere. You see the sun god, you see the moon god, you see the mother and child. Have you ever wondered about that? How can all these different religions, just with a different name, be having the same figure or statue or whatever they have in all these different areas? I mean, the religions are totally different. Hinduism and Catholicism and all these others with the statues, they're totally different. But yet, the statues look exactly the same. That's Babylon, folks. So, what do I have here? Underneath this false religion, God calls it wickedness. And that wickedness, he also calls it a harlot. Why? Because it's a, for lack of a better term, it's a prostitution of the true religion. It's horrible, folks. But basically, God calls it unclean. All right? It's a harlot because it's unclean. So that's false religion. What happened at Babylon? Confusion of tongues exported Babylon's religion all around the world. And that's what we have today. Number 3, it also consolidated again under Nebuchadnezzar in Jerusalem. So with Nimrod, it went away. And then everything got scattered, but God used this man called Nebuchadnezzar. And you read about Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel, and God used him to conquer the city of Jerusalem. And you read that, and you can go from 1 Kings, 2 Kings, and Chronicles. You can read all about that. So we're not going to take the time to go there. But what happened in the fourth step? The fourth step came when God allowed the Medes and Persians, that's what that MP stand for, when the Medes and Persians took over what? They conquered Babylon. All right, they destroyed them. Remember in Daniel, it talks about the handwriting on the wall, and God told Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, hey, you've been weighed in the balance, dude, and found wanting, and your kingdom is going to end tonight. And wasn't but hours later that Darius the Mede came in and overthrew Babylon without a fight, folks. Babylon was this great kingdom, but they fell without a fight. That's the sovereignty of God. Okay, so the Medes and Persians took over. They left the city. What city? Babylon. They left the city of Babylon intact. They didn't destroy it. Okay, and they placed their capital in Paragodia. That's in Iran. So the Persians didn't destroy Babylon, but the king of the Medes and Persians didn't settle in Babylon. They wanted to have their capital city over in Iran today, okay? And you can read all about that. Listen, folks, here's the beauty of the Bible. What I have here outlined in number 4, that's the story of Esther, Ezra, and Nehemiah. So if you're familiar with those books, you would know exactly what happened with bullet number 4. It is amazing how God took this time period of the Medes and Persians, and I'm going to show you in detail, just give you some brief points on each one of these books and what God did to make that point. And then after that, we're going to look at Greece. When Greece took over for the Medes and Persians, they persecuted the priests. What priests? The Babylonian priests. Okay? And what they did, they moved to Pergamos. So all of this stuff moves around in the Bible. So what do we find in Pergamos? You find that in Revelation. And you hear God says, hey, Pergamos, you're where Satan's seat is located. So I'll show you how all this stuff plays together right after this break. Hello everyone, Kevin Madison here with book 2 of my 4-book series from Sinner to Saint Metamorphosis, The Chastisement of the Lord. Have you ever wondered how the Lord reacts to one of his children who deliberately sinned against him? Let's make this personal. Have you sinned against your Heavenly Father and wondered if he is angry with you and what will happen next? This, my friend, is a book you don't want to be without. You can order the book on Amazon or from my website, kevinjmadison.com.
Do you feel that marketing companies just want to take your money and give you no service? Do you want a company you can trust? Do you value ethical behavior and Christian values? If you have answered yes to these questions, you should consider switching from your marketing company to Christian marketing experts. This company was founded on God's command that we love one another. We do everything for God first and then for our clients. When we started our business, we were working for a company providing search engine optimization for dentists. The company was not run ethically. The owners lied to their clients, refused to listen to advice, and didn't provide the services they promised. Louise and Usman decided there had to be a better way to provide marketing. They have a reputation now for trust because they are always honest in their dealings with clients. If this makes sense, call 727-256-4427 or visit their website www.christianmarketingexperts.com.
Hello everyone, Kevin Madison here. Hey, I want to introduce you to my new book, The God That Loves and Hates. Hey, this is a book about the book of Obadiah. Why God loved Jacob and hated Esau. We are talking about sovereign election. But it's more than that. God goes through here the book and explain to us how he goes about sovereign election. Check it out today on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there with us. So let's continue going through Babylon, and then we're going to quickly switch over to the Medes and Persians. So what happened after this? So Greece came in. They conquered the Persians. There was a big, long, drawn-out war between these two. But Alexander the Great, God used Alexander the Great to take over the Medes and Persians after they took over from the Babylonians. Now, the Medes and Persians expanded their territory dramatically over what King Nebuchadnezzar had. And then when Alexander the Great came, he also expanded the empire a little bit as well. But he did some good things, relatively speaking, right? He did some good things in that he did things that God needed done to bring forth the Messiah. Okay, so when they took over, they did something. The Persians left the Babylonian priests alone. So you had the Babylonian priests doing their thing over in Babylon. But the Persians moved their capital to Iran. So when the Greek took over, what did they do? They set up shop in Babylon. They didn't put their capital here in Iran. They set up their capital in structure. Alexander stayed there for a while. So what happened? The culture started clashing. See, the Greeks had a certain culture, and Alexander was very strict on this. He wanted everybody to be Hellenized. Everybody. So the Babylonians had this freedom under the Medes and Persians. But Alexander the Great said, oh, no, sir, you're gonna bow down and do exactly what I want you to do. So what happened? He started persecuting the priests of Babylon. So remember, Babylon is the capital of all false religion. So because of that, the priests, they moved to a city called Pergamus. And that's where you find Pergamus in the book of Revelation. And we see it clearly in that book that God then says about Pergamus, that's where Satan's seat is located. That's interesting, folks. Why? Because Babylon, the spiritual side, the priests moved from Babylon to Pergamus. That's where it comes from. So you see what I'm telling you? When you got to take the whole Bible, you can't just take this little section in Babylon and make that a doctrine. All right? We need to be able to look at the whole Bible as a whole, and the Bible clearly tells us through history. This is you can go into history, a normal history book, and you can find out what I'm telling you right here, what happened, because it's written. Okay? So when they went to Pergamus, the high priest, that's what that HP stands for, had this title. What high priest? The high priest over the Babylonian religion. Okay? He had a title. That title was Pontifex Maximus. That was the first mention of any person ever having that title. It was the head priest in the Babylonian religion. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with that word, with that phrase, Pontifex Maximus. That's where it came from. And you can look that up, by the way. Google it. You'll find out that for yourself. So after that, when Greece was at the height of his power, Alexander, as a young man in his early 30s, died. All right, I think he died from a fever or something like that. And he had 5 generals. These generals split the kingdom. All right? But there was 2 generals who fought over certain pieces of the land. The Bible calls them one from the south, one from the north. I think it's in Daniel chapter 10. They fight against each other, and you find out the one from the south overcame the one from the north. And that left 4 of the generals controlling all the land that Alexander had conquered. So what happened? Well, Rome came in. And as this king, the king of the south, wanted to expand his territory, he wanted to go and he wanted to destroy Egypt and conquer the Egyptian land. But Rome stepped in because they had an allegiance with Egypt. to protect them. So they came under the protection of Rome because Rome was getting extremely strong by this time. So Rome told him, hey, you come in there, you're going to pick a fight with Rome. And he didn't want to do that because he knew he couldn't win that battle. So he took out his anger on Israel. So remember, Egypt was down here, the way the territory works. So Egypt was here. In order to get to Egypt, he had to come through this little land right here, which was Israel. So you had Israel here, Egypt here, and the king was actually coming from this area. He was coming down through Egypt, through Israel. Notice all the battles in Israel, when they get attacked, is always from the north. All right. So you had Syria over here. What was happening? He had to come through Israel to get to Egypt. All right. So when Rome told him, hey, if you pick a fight with Egypt, we're going to come down and we're going to attack you. We're going to destroy you. So he turned back. And when he went back into Israel, he started persecuting the Jews. He killed most of them that he can find. He killed all of them. He made the priests do allegiance to him. He went into Jerusalem, went into the temple, and that's when he committed the abomination of desolation, erecting a statue of Zeus in the Jewish temple. And the Bible, that's what the Bible calls it, the abomination of desolation. So he was a typical portrait of the coming Antichrist that's mentioned in Revelation. So with that said, we see here that when Rome took over, eventually Rome takes over, right? By the time Christ comes, and Julius Caesar, everybody knows Julius Caesar. If you have any sense of Roman history, Julius Caesar, he took over, okay, that name. He loved that name. So he told the Babylonian priest, I'm going to leave you alone, but you're not going to keep that name. I'm going to take the name Pontifex Maximus. And if you look up Julius Caesar in history, you can read it for yourself. He took that name for himself, but most people don't know that it actually came from the Babylonian priests. Now, watch this. Okay, so here in the 15th century, the Pontifex Maximus title was bestowed on somebody. It was bestowed on the Bishop of Rome. Today, he's called the Pope. Okay, so you can go, again, go to history. You know, Rome had a pope, had a bishop for a long time. When Rome Catholicism was coming up, they had one back in the days of Constantine, before him, all right? And Constantine actually became the first priest, high priest in Rome. So that transition from Constantine, and this title was passed down, this particular emperor, he didn't want the title. So he said, okay, I don't want this title, but somebody needs to have it. So he gave it to the Bishop of Rome, who became the Pope. And today, they still call him the Pontifex Maximus. So basically, during this time here, we call it the Dark Ages. What was going on, this is when you had the Spanish Inquisition, you had all these things in the Middle East where people was just being slaughtered in the name of religion. You had the church with an army basically ruling all these different lands. So next, what we had is that God said through Zechariah, and this is the book in the Bible, that in the last days, he was going to do something. That God was going to quietly send wickedness. Remember, let's go back. One, wickedness, false religion, the harlot. God says, I'm going to send wickedness back to her homeland. Now, when he says homeland, he don't necessarily mean the city Babylon in Iran or in Iraq. That's not what he means. He's talking spiritually. Now watch this. He says, I'm going to send it back into the land of Shinar, and it's going to be carried by two demons. So what is he talking about? He's talking about the demon of materialism and the demon of false religion. See, Kevin, man, I hear you, but I don't really follow you. Okay, well, turn with me to Zechariah. I'll show you exactly where it's at, and I'll give you a sense of how this all comes together. Now, folks, I realize this is a lot, and because of the limitation we have on time, I can't go into great detail in all these things. It just takes way too much time. As a matter of fact, I can take you from each one of these points And we can do 10 shows on each one of them. I'll help you build the foundation. This is what this part is talking about. We're talking about building the foundation. And as we build the foundation, I'm giving you enough information where you can go start looking this stuff up for yourself, and you can read about it, and you can have just as much knowledge as you want about it. So turn with me, please. Zechariah chapter 5. Let me read a few verses for you. Starting in verse 5. Then the angel who talked with me. So this is an angel talking to the prophet Zechariah. He says, and came out and he said to me, lift up your eyes now, Zechariah, and see what this is that goes forth. So this is a vision that Zechariah is having with this angel. So I asked, what is it? He's seen it, but he couldn't understand exactly what it was. He didn't know the meaning. And the angel said, it is a basket that is going forward. So going forward, meaning in the future. In the future, this is something that is going to happen. Watch this. Continuing in verse 6. He also said, this is the resemblance throughout the earth. Resemblance, meaning that the spirit of Babylon is throughout the earth. The God of this world, this age, is Satan. That spirit behind the throne, behind the physical, is a throne called Satan, satanic throne. Okay, remember, God also said behind every idol, all these statues, all these pictures of so-called God and angels and all that stuff. Sorry to burst you guys' bubble, but God said behind all that stuff is a demon. No, a real demon. Not one that you can see and manipulate and talk to. Behind all that stuff, these statues of Buddha and Mary and all. Listen, folks, the Bible makes it clear. Behind all that stuff is a real demon. And that's why people are having problems with all this stuff in their houses. So I would recommend you, look, if you got all that mess in your house, these little prayer cards and all that, look, get rid of that stuff. God says behind every one of them is a demon. Okay, God don't lie, remember that. All right, so let's continue. Verse 7. Here is a lead disc lifted up. So God has it trapped in a basket. God sealed it up. That's what the lead disc means. And this is a woman sitting inside of a basket. A woman in a basket. Folks, she's a harlot. She's unclean. What is he telling us? He's telling us there's a wicked harlot, an unclean demon, a spirit. Who's that? That's the false religion, folks. That's false religion. So notice how all of this now start to make sense to you. So what I want you to do, go read Zechariah 5 through 8. And next week, we're going to pick it up right there. And we'll see you next week and we'll start it again.